All right, all right. I won't leave you hanging any longer there, guys. Good to see a bunch of people here today. It looks like so far. I got this is some high level numbers I'm putting out here. I guess if you stop talking about 40k from 30 years ago and start talking about 40k from today, uh, people tune in. So how's everybody doing? I'm Christian. This is the Eternal Chronicles. This is my live stream that I kind of do Monday to Friday. Although last week we had a few missed days, but regardless, I'm usually here Monday to Friday noon. Um, the uh, the noon Eastern Standard Time. So if you're on the East Coast, if you're on the West Coast, it's probably what, like 9 a.m. there. Good times. Well, it is noon. It is lunchtime. Not that I eat anymore, um, but and it's funny because up until now on my stream, what I've been doing is I've been talking about Rogue Trader mostly. If you watched any of my previous streams going back to October, I was painting all Rogue Trader orcs. Here's a quick little. There's one that I did up. That's the Orc Dreadnought. So I painted an entire Rogue Trader era Space Orc army in October, and then the plan, the plan was to continue painting Rogue Trader models into November. November, because I was going to call it, but it was basically Rogue Trader. So the streams last week, I painted up some Rogue Trader models, most notably this guy. This is the Inquisitor. You know what? I'll switch over. We'll switch over here, and I'll throw him down there for you, so you can get a nice look at my Inquisitor. And if you saw me painting him last week, if you watched the two streams, I was having trouble with the spats. I actually just gave up on the spats and base coated them with like a dark leather brown, and I'm just gonna finish that because at one point they were like cocky and kind of off white, and then they were white. I wasn't sure what to do with them, but I think I realized that they probably needed to be darker to balance them out. So yeah, so that happened, and then I painted a few other Rogue Trader models, which I'll throw down here. So there's this guy. I believe this guy's name is like Old Timey Joe or something like that. And yeah, this is an old tech priest. He's been called an astropath. Everything from an astropath to a tech to a mechanicum guy, but I'm using him as a xenobiologist, but he would be mechanicum. That's why he's got the red robes. And then a whole bunch of other, like, tons and tons and tons of other Rogue Trader stuff I was painting. Oop, spoiler alert. So yeah, but then sort of last week I got my hands on the new Space Marine Codex, and I got my hands on a physical copy of the Warhammer 40,000 9th edition rules, and I read the rulebook, and I read the Codex, and I'm extremely excited to announce that I'm excited to play 9th edition 40k. And if you know me, that you may be like, oh, well, yeah, but you always play 40k. It's like, yeah, I did always play 40k, but I, if you know me, you know that I've been playing and hobbying in the Warhammer 40,000 universe since the inception. I got into it with my friend Nico when we were in like grade 8 or grade 9, and that would have been in the very late 80s. I want to say like 88, 87, 88. Like we basically right when Rogue Trader first became available in North America, so it had probably been available in the UK for a while, and then the friendly local gaming store, the Silver Snail here in Toronto, was importing Citadel models, and they imported the game, and my friend and I, we picked it up. And I've discussed that, sort of how I got into the hobby, but that is how I got into the hobby, was with Rogue Trader. So this game has a very special place in my heart. 30 plus years of hobbying and being a 40k enthusiast and being a 40k player. So when I say that I'm excited to play 9th edition, that's because I wasn't excited to play 8th edition. I wasn't excited to play 7th edition. I wasn't excited to play 6th edition. For me, my peak 40k playing years were definitely 2nd edition. I played a ton of 2nd edition. When 3rd edition came out, we actually initially took a pass on it because we were playing Warzone, which is like the Mutant Chronicles miniature game. And then about a year after playing that, we decided, okay, you know what, let's go back to Warhammer. So we, started playing third edition, and then my peak years would definitely be fourth and fifth edition. For me, that was sort of the most engaging time with Warhammer 40,000 for me personally. I painted the most models, I played the most games, I engaged with the community the most during that time. And then by the time 6th edition came out, now it wasn't that I wasn't hyped for 6th edition, but I was also at that point starting a family, so I had a kid. So playing sort of took a back burner to everything else. And I didn't really play much 6th edition, and honestly, when 7th edition came out, I wasn't that enthralled with the rules because I'd sort of grown tired of the 3rd edition core, which so if you don't know, Warhammer 1st and 2nd edition, fairly different games. 3rd edition was a vast reset of the entire game. Andy Chambers came in and changed a lot of the principles of how 3rd edition was of how Warhammer 40,000 would now be played, and those lasted all the way till about 7th edition. In 8th edition, we got another hard reset of the game, and when those rules came out, I was actually peddling miniatures at that time. I was working at a friendly local gaming store. And so I wasn't all that excited. I mean, I was excited about the game in terms of sales potential, but when I read the rulebook, I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. And what they've basically done with 8th edition is take a lot of stuff from 2nd edition and put it back into the game. They removed a lot of the abstraction that was sort of the core principle of 3rd to 7th edition 40K. So they brought to hit modifiers back. They brought cover back into the game in some ways, although the terrain rules were very not great. And that was sort of what the when I sort of watched people playing 8th edition, and I've played about half a dozen games of 8th edition. And I played exactly one game of 9th edition, which was on Ash Barker's Guerrilla Miniature Games channel. So if you go over to GMG, Guerrilla Miniature Games, and you can search, I did an encouraging game with my Mantis Warriors, which is what these guys are going to be for. Back at the beginning of, I want to say at the beginning of the summer when the game first came out. When did it come out? June, July? Whenever 9th edition came out, I played one game with him. So based on my one game with him, I am super excited to play 9th edition. No. But definitely based on that experience and playing that game and seeing the changes that 9th edition brought, the core of how the game played appealed to me a lot more when I played my one game of 9th edition compared to the 8th edition games that I played with my Mantis Warriors. And I played one game with my old Craft World Eldar. So I'm just going to quickly go through the chat here as fast as I can, and then we'll get talking a bit more about 9th edition and why I'm excited to play 9th edition. So Functional, welcome to the I don't think I've seen you here before, so yo. Inquisitor Shavak, welcome back. You're always here, so it's good to see return. Even though I'm not painting Rogue Trader models at the moment, it's good to see people back here. 9th edition, Gala Brow says, 9th edition, whoop whoop. Yeah, I'm very whoop whoop for 9th edition. Just got back into 40K after 12 years and already have a 2,000 point Space Marine army. Awesome. What chapter? That's exactly what sort of this show is about, is like having not, I mean, I've always engaged in the 40K hobby. Regardless of whether or not I've been hyped to actually play the game, I don't paint and build armies necessary to play the game. I paint and build armies to paint and build armies. That's my hobby, right? I probably spend about 20% of my time playing games and 80% of my time planning to play games. So we got Mantis equals successors of the White Scars. Yes, they are. And my Mantis Warriors, I've sort of written my own lore for them. Stealing a lot of ideas from bad tropes. I'm going to show off my Mantis Warriors in a minute here. But yeah, so my Mantis Warriors, I've always liked White Scars. I think even back in Rogue Trader at one point I was considering doing White Scars, but I wasn't confident in my ability to paint a white army. It wasn't until years later when I realized that white is the easiest color to paint. All you need is some light gray wash, and white is super, super easy to paint. So homebrew is the way, says Alex. Yeah. my Mantis Warriors are kind of homebrew, but yeah, I did a homebrew chapter for 3rd edition, my Omega Marines, which was an Ultramarine symbol flipped upside down, but it was actually the older Ultramarine symbol, so it was the Rogue Trader era Ultramarine symbol, which was a little bit more stylized. So, and I used actually those old decals and just flipped them upside down and put them on. Yeah. So Galen, so tell me what's your name of your chapter and what do you got in it, and I'll tell you then what I got in mine. But yeah, mine is homebrew, White Scars Successor. Yeah, White Scars are cool, man. You know why? We move so good. We move so good. The ability to advance and charge is massive. The ability to advance and shoot at full effectiveness is even more massive. And one of the reasons why I decided that I was going to get 3 of these little new ATVs. Let's switch over. Boink. The reason I decided that I was going to get 3 of these new ATVs was because I actually like the models. A lot of people don't like them and think they're kind of Mario Kart-ish. Once I assembled one of them, I bought 2, and I assembled one and was like, actually, this is a pretty cool model. There's not a lot of posability. It's essentially snap fit. I didn't need to use glue on it, even though I did. You don't need to. These go together like the Outrider bikes in much the same way. Not that one, because that's the Chaplain. That one actually requires glue. But let me pull out some of my other Outrider bikes here, and you'll sort of see the theme. You might, woo! Good thing, eh? Plastic models. So yeah, these are really cool, and the White Scars make them really good. 1 CP, these guys can move 20 inches up the table and fire with full effectiveness on those multi-meltas. And, oh yeah, Laurent, 3. That's right. That's 12 power, baby. Coming at you. I think they're 85 points apiece with the multi-meltas. Yeah, I had to have 3. I had 2, and then I was like, wait a second. These guys are amazing in a White Scars army. And I actually really like the kit. I really like the little compact nature of it. You know what's funny? It's the only thing in a Space Marine army that doesn't have a base. Sorry, in a Primaris Space Marine army that doesn't have a base. Rhinos and Land Raiders don't have bases. But these don't come with bases. These are actually bases that I got from somewhere else. I have 3 of them for something. I have no idea. But I've got so many bases. I must have bought a whole bunch of bases at one point. So I have bases that work for it. Which is good because they need bases, because especially if you're going to run them with your Outriders, or even if they're just going to match the rest of your army. The entire army, if my entire army is Primaris, which my Mantis Warriors are, everything in the army has a base, except for this stupid thing. GW, put a base in the box. Look, you've got a perfectly sized base for it. You make a base for this thing. Just put a base in the box. Anyways, there's my my rant. Yeah, so I'm doing 3 of the ATVs, and I'm going to have 6 of the bikes. And the Chaplain on a bike. So the Chaplain on a bike, who I just think is, I mean, this is, you want to talk about a ubiquitous Space Marine character. A Space Marine Chaplain, there's been a Space Marine Chaplain on a bike since Rogue Trader. One of the first releases, once they released the Bullock or the Vincent Black Shadow bike, one of the first character releases was a Chaplain on a bike. In 2nd edition, we had a Chaplain on a bike. 3rd edition, we had a Chaplain on a bike. And I'm pretty sure that 3rd edition Chaplain on a bike lasted for 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 7th. And then finally, we got a Chaplain on a bike again. Yay! And he should be... Chaplains on bikes are so good because of those litanies. So he can litany these guys up, and they'll fly in and rip up things in combat, and he will help them. And then these guys, 3 of them moving up the table 20 inches... unloading their multi-meltas into the side of a vehicle, that vehicle is dead. Because if I get within 12 inches, I'm doing D6 plus 4 damage or something. D6 plus 2. I don't know. It doesn't matter. You know what? It's rules. Games. They're just cool. And for White Scars, they fit. When I've got a order, so I'm going to show off my Mantis Warriors, and then I'll tell you sort of. So I've got an order of, I use third-party bits for my Mantis Warriors. Just going to move this stuff over here, and you can see some of them on here. So this is the helmet, and this is one of the larger shoulder pads that I use. So these guys are all, and these guys are not going to be painted like the rest of my Mantis Warriors either. I'm doing these, if you know what a bozuku, it's Japanese biker gangs. So my Mantis Warriors are slightly samurai themed. I walk a very fine line between the fine line of do these things look like space samurais? Are they out of place in the 40k universe? Do they still have sort of that gothic feel? So I'm gonna lay down. These are my aggressors, and I call these guys my Yojimbos because they bodyguard my chapter master, who, when we start our Crusade campaign in 2021, when we can finally all go back outside, we're going to start a Crusade campaign, me and my buddies, and he will just be a Space Marine captain in Gravis armor at that point. So this is him here. His name is Miyamoto Mifune, and he carries the Black Blade of the Dreaded Wu, which is a... is it a Chaos Blade? I don't know. He got it in the center of the Maelstrom. You tell me. Is it a Chaos Blade? They actually think it's Xenos in origin. It's also it's potentially also the oldest sword ever. I write a lot of ridiculous fan fiction. But yeah, so you can see, like, I've gone with some Space Marine stylizing. They all have a like a sheathed wakazashi, or the shorter katana. They have a sheathed one. So all these guys have the sheath katana, and then they've got the big scale shoulder pads, and then they've got these, which are called sasamonos, which are on their back. So that's kind of and then they've got the I can never remember the name of the helmet. The Japanese helmets have a particular name. I want to say like Bonce or something. I think it begins with a D. But anyways, someone look it up. I don't have time to go and look it up. What they're called right now, but they're wearing basically samurai style helmets, and these bits are all from, except for the sheathed katanas, which I call zashi blades, because why wouldn't I? And there's a whole lore about which guys get to carry zashi blades and why they have zashi blades, because it's all sort of built into the lore that I've written for the Mantis Warriors, because they are sort of a DIY chapter. I mean, they exist. They're a Forge World chapter in some ways. They exist. They're White Scar successors, but there's not a lot of information about them, and that means that I can kind of take what I want and fill in the rest. But anyways, so these are all Puppets War. So the shoulder pads, the helmets, and the sasamonos all came from Puppets War. So shout out to Puppets War. I have another order in right now so that I have enough bits to complete my Outriders and my ATVs. Which, as I said, are going to be painted completely different than the rest of my army. As you can see, I've gone with a really nice green. This is actually Death Guard green. This is a Citadel green. Yeah, well, you can zoom in there a bit. So this is Death Guard green. The shoulder pads were then based with Wraithbone, which I then washed with which contrast? Yandin yellow? Yeah. It looks like either used a Yandin yellow or maybe the other one. Nazdrag's a little brown. I'll figure it out when I have to repaint them. I'm pretty sure it's quite an orangey, so I think it might be a Yandin. So that's the yellow, and then the gray is just Luftwaffe gray or some German gray that I used, and then obviously metallics and things like that. But so they're basically like classic Mantis Warrior paint scheme with this green, and my bikes and my ATVs are actually going to be black, red, and white. Sort of taking an inspiration from those Bonzuko, from those Japanese biker gangs. Just go Google like Japanese biker gangs 1970s, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And that's sort of where I want to go with these guys, because they're going to be like a special sect within my Mantis Warriors that are actually like they get led around by the chaplains, so they're all kind of like potential Judaseers or whatever, like. They're the zealous fanatics sort of thing. Whereas these guys are part of the command structure. And these guys are getting new heads. So I'm taking these heads and replacing them with newer heads that Puppets War has made that are a little bit more ornate. And then these heads will actually be used on some intercessors that I'm in the process of working on. And speaking of intercessors, here is... this is a veteran intercessor sergeant. You can see he's got, on his Sasamono, he's got the little Terminator honor there, so he's a veteran sergeant, and he's got a nice big power katana. That's a Cromlech bit. I'm not sure where I got this hand from, but I think I built this pommel. I think this might actually be a Death Watch bit for the handle of the sword, and then his his assault bolter is slung over, and then he's got the Zashi blade as well. So I have one squad of these guys that are all like veterans. So I'll just quickly show you an average veteran in that squad. So it's a squad of 5. All my squads are no bigger than 5. I've kept all my squads at minimum size, mainly because my Mantis Warriors are trying to rebuild their chapter because they got their asses kicked in the Badab War and were forced to go on a century-long penitent crusade. And they took that opportunity to basically just dive straight into the middle of the Maelstrom to like seek their fate. They're like, we're gonna go into the Maelstrom and we're just gonna fight until the last one of us is dead. So that's what they went off and did. And then when the Cicadrix malediction happened, the Maelstrom sort of vomited them back out into real space, and they came back into the Imperium, and were like, well, everything's screwed up now. And then they weren't granted any gray shields when I think they're called the Torchlight Fleet or whatever. The new lore is a mess, by the way. So the Torchlight fleets, which carried all the Grey Shield Primaris, all the Primaris that Call had made on Mars or Terra, wherever he was making those Primaris. You can tell I'm really up on my 9th or 8th edition lore. But the Mantis Warriors didn't get any. Instead, what the Mantis Warriors got was basically they were told that there was no place for them, so they could all go and become Black Shields. They could all go and join the Death Watch and become Black Shields. Which means they basically they erase the history of their chapter, or they could all undergo the Rubicon. All the survivors could undergo the Rubicon Primaris, as like tests, right? Like we'll just test it at the Rubicon Primaris on you guys on like a mass level, and it worked. And a few Mantis Warriors came out the other end, and that's all these guys. So if they have like a Zashi blade or they have one of these shoulder pads, one of these helmets, it means that they're like Rubicon. And then they've started and then they're able to recruit again. So I have like just basic, generic, not generic, they're very cool, but these are my like basic intercessors. So that's what they look like. Tactical symbol. I'm thinking I'm probably gonna put some numbers on a knee pad somewhere because they kind of need something else a little bit before I go over and completely finish these guys off with some dull coat because they're still sort of not done. And here's the sergeant of that squad. He will be losing that chainsword because I've decided that my Mantis Warriors don't actually use chainswords. So I have vibro katanas on the way from Puppets War, which I'm going to use instead, which is like some Xenos tech that they found in the Maelstrom and realized that this is actually better and more efficient than a chainsword in terms of power control. Whatever, it doesn't matter. They decided that they were going to use these vibro blades instead of using chainswords. It just happens that these vibro blades have the exact same rules as chainswords. So let's see what's going on in the chat here. Oh boy, wow, good. There's active chat. I actually have to scroll up to read chat. So he said, Inquisitor Shavak says, I've been doing Dark Angels since the Deathwing book, so for a while. I'm assuming you're talking about the Deathwing novel. I actually have over there on the shelf. I should go grab it. Yeah. I thought about doing Dark Angels back in Rogue Trader. I actually painted up a Dark Angels Predator, which is now lost to time. But there was on the decal sheet, there was a huge Dark Angel symbol, and that's when the Dark Angel symbol looked more like a bomb, like a winged bomb, as opposed to the winged sword that it kind of is now. It kind of looked like that. Like it was a very stylized blade, but it almost looked like an upside down mortar or something. And it had wings on it, and it was a large one, so I put it sort of on an angle on the side of that nice round turret that the first plastic Predator had, and that was fantastic. That looked really cool. So yeah, I have a soft spot in my heart for Dark Angels too because I really like that Death Watch book, and I was gonna do. At one point, everyone was going to do Dark Angels, right? They're a cool Space Marine army. Tyler says they are very Mario Kart-ish. I mean, in as much as that they have 4 wheels and they're low to the ground, I think that once you actually... I always reserve final judgment of a model until I'm holding it in my hands. The pictures on the GW website, I don't think really did it justice. The fact that there is 0 posability in this kit, too, because it is push fit. Like, I can pop his arms out, and I can show you. Like, it's all push fit. So you can actually, with the arms, you can take the arms out, and I could swap out the weapon, So I could put the Onslaught Gatling Cannon in here so I could have a choice of which weapon I use, which I may do, or I may just still Mania it. I kind of like the idea of them being like multi-melted, like they're dedicated armor hunters. Like they're like big game hunters are these guys, right? And they get that from like the White Scars sort of influence on them, is that these guys are like big. I even considered, I was talking to a friend of mine, because I don't really like this front all that much, and we were talking about like maybe like mounting like a beast skull there instead, which I thought would look really cool. But you can see, so the feet for the gunner are molded to this diamond plate on the bottom here, which really sucks because I could easily just take those feet off and build another gunner for it so it could be a bit more dynamic, but I'd have to do something about this diamond plate, and I don't know. It almost doesn't seem necessary, but as you can see, everything on it is snap fit. So if you built the Outrider bikes from the Indominus box set, which are the Outrider bikes that are now currently available, the only Outrider bikes, because they're not doing like multi-part ones. They're like snap fit. Snap fit's the future, boys. I guess so, because this kit is totally snap fit. Even though I did use glue, because that's what you do. I like them. So here we go. Loran says, "Wow, 3 of them. Damn, tank hunting. I take it. Yeah, they're big game hunters, man. They go after the biggest thing. If it's a Carnifex or a Hive Tyrant, or if it's a enemy tank, or like a squad of I don't know, Tau Crisis suits. I don't know. They're big game hunters. I pick the biggest thing on the table and drive these guys 20 inches towards it and unleash. Spend 1 CP so that they just fire with full effectiveness with their multi-meltas. And their multi-meltas essentially become Assault 2 weapons for the turn. And White Scars don't suffer minuses for shooting assault weapons when they advance, so I can go 20 inches up the table and just put meltas into the side of your tank. And if I've got 6 shots hitting on 3s, yeah. And then potentially he can even give them a litany that... oh no, they're not core. So he can't give them a litany. Anyways, so here we go. So Galen says, Aggressor Squads, 2 Dreads, Vanguard Veterans Squad. Very cool. Sternguard Veterans, 1 attack bike with multi-melta, and have some Outriders on the way. Outriders, I think, are fantastic. The fact that they get so many attacks on the charge, and they can just barrel into units with the Chaplain. And then, because we're White Scars, we can then fall back out of combat, spend a CP, shoot you, and then charge back into combat. Chris, you're going with boring normal shoulder pads? No. So the gunner is going to have a different head and will have one of these large scaled shoulder pads. The driver is sort of like an aspirant, and I could probably squeeze a shoulder pad onto him, but I'm not going to. And I'm not going to change his helmet. I'm just going to leave the driver the way he is, and he will be painted slightly different. They're all going to be painted in like I said, like black and red, and with like white as an accent color. Chaplain with the bike's dirty. Okay, so Lauren says, I've been playing with that, and it's been amazing, and they will be perfect for what you want your samurai bike cavalry perfectly. Oh, yeah. Wish I could stick around. Would love to play games sometime, man. Hey, Galen. Thanks for... Yeah. Oh, I thought it was snowing outside. It's just leaves falling. I'm like... That's snow? Nope. Kabuto, there you go. Thank you, Loren. That is correct. If you did numbers and stripes on the knee pad, that would be awesome. Well, I might do Roman numerals. Because I have so many of these stupid GW decals with Roman numerals on them. So I might just do, like, squad marking. So first squad, second, third. And then... I like some of these little scriptures too, actually. That's kind of cool. I might have to use some of these. And then you've got the Iron Halos, Crusade icons. So this is a cool little transfer sheet. I didn't realize that this... I just kind of dismissed it, but it's got like the little lieutenant. I mean, obviously it's all Ultra, but you've got little Iron Halos and stuff here. That's cool. And then I've got... so all the decals on these guys are custom decals from Chapter Creator. I think it's Fallout Hobbies. Chapter Creator is where I order these decals, but they have all kinds of different decals you can order, and they're amazing quality. They go on really smooth. As you can see, I've got these. Well, these are gloss right now because I have not done decaling them, but like those decals went on, and there's no silvering. They are excellent quality decals. So shout out to them as well. I should find out who these people actually are, but Puppets War for the bits. And as you can see, I've used the Sassamono on here. And he's gonna have another, probably 2 more Sassamonos coming off the back of his bike, here and here, like out this way. Because like I said, if you look at those, at like Japanese biker gangs from like the 70s, well, they started in the 50s, but like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the like outlaw bozokus, Japanese biker gangs, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like they'll have like big pennants hanging off the backs of their bikes, and they'll have wild color schemes. So I kind of really want to do something like that, which is why I settled on black and red, because I think it'll look really sharp. It'll match the helmets. It'll stand out from the rest of the army. Sorry, I just got a Marine that's falling apart here. These close combat guys. I was assembling them last night. So yeah, so I've got a bunch more guys I can show off here. Some pretty cool stuff. So yeah, so these are my Yojimbo. So it's 5 aggressors. So it's a below strength unit. So because normally it would be 6 aggressors. Don't ask me why it's only 5. It's just the way of the world. I decided I only wanted to do 5, and then it just sort of made sense because they were a bodyguard for my chapter master. That's why they're called the Yojimbo. Chapter master Miyamoto Mufune, the bearer of the black blade of the dreaded Wu. There's no sense in hobbying 40k if you're not going to be ridiculously silly with what you call your guys and things like that. So I'll show you some more of these guys, and then we'll just quickly get back to talking about why I'm hyped to play 9th edition. And I'm hyped to play 9th edition because of my Mantis Warriors as well. So you probably, if you've seen these guys before, you probably would have seen them on Ash's channel, as I said. So this is my lieutenant, and his Sassamono's not done yet because I've got to put lieutenant markings on there. And then I want to put some scriptures and stuff like that. So they walk that fine line between looking vaguely Eastern, with sort of the weaponry, and then not being grimdark gothic space marine. They're space marines. Space marines haven't. These guys don't really look all that gothic anymore. But this guy, he's got the mastercrafted super gun. I can't remember what it is. It's the heavy one, because he's like a backfield lieutenant. He sits back with all my bolter boys and gives them those sweet rerolls. And then I've got some, and these guys aren't done yet. I painted their cloaks several times. So I painted their cloaks once, and I didn't like what I had done, so I painted it over again. And now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up painting these cloaks one last time to get them sort of where I want. I don't really like this brown. I want it to be more yellow. And if you know anything about the Mantis Warriors, go and look at their Bad Ab War, their Tranquility campaign camo pattern. That's what I want to do on their camo cloaks. And then I've got some of these guys, the Suppressors, who are really cool. I call these guys my Jigabachis. If you know what a Jigabachi is, if you don't, just go look it up. It's a Japanese killer wasp. And then the other ones are the what are these guys called? Inceptors, with their big giant super bolt pistols. And these guys I call my Izumebachi, which is another Japanese giant killer wasp, because they've got a lot of giant killer wasps over in Japan. So, and then I've got more aggressors. So these are aggressors, but these are the aggressors with the flamers. And everyone scoffed at me when I gave them flamers and not like my Yojimbos with the super bolter glove and frag launchers. But in 9th edition, these guys are going to be worth their weight in gold, because their flamers now have a 12-inch range. And if you see on mine, for some reason, I've given them all these grav shoots. That's because I think it's cool to spend a CP on them and have them outflank. So they'll march on your table edge, or they'll march on the table on a table edge, get within 9 inches of something, and then just unload with those flamers. And then they can even try an assault, because we can do that sort of thing. So I've got a squad of 3 of those, and you can see the squad leader. He's obviously the squad leader because he's got the helmet, and he's got the Zashi blade and the shoulder pad, and then these guys are just regular dudes. So Yeah. And then my other lieutenant is this guy. You can see he's got the paired combat blades that the lieutenant in Phobos armor gets, and of course I've used a pair of little the little Zashi blades, so a little pair of katanas, and then I put his bolter on his hip here, because I thought that you would just maglock it to his hip. And he comes down with not one, but 2 squads of Reavers. So everyone said Reavers are garbage, and they're probably right. But these are my Reavers, so this is the sergeant for one of my Reaver squads, and you can see he's got the skull face going on there. Sorry, I'm just going to brighten it up a bit. Is that better? Yeah. So he's got the skull face, he's got his Zashi blade, and he's pointing. I'll break out just like a regular looking guy, so you can see what they look like. He's got the little blade, so that replaces their combat knife, and they've got the bolt pistol. So they changed their bolters, so they've got decent. Their bolters are actually really cool now. They made heavy bolt pistols really good, or they gave heavy bolt pistols to the assault intercessors, right? And these guys have some cool new special. I think they're called special issue bolt pistols, and I think they're like 12-inch range, but they've got the like -1 to hit, or the -1 AP. I need to fix this base rim. There's a bit of the base color showing through there. But yeah, so all my guys have these little blades, all my Reavers, and they'll all come down with him, sort of as a blob, because he's a lieutenant and he's cool like that. So most of my army is sort of designed to hit you from multiple angles at once, while at the same time a big blob of aggressors advance towards you as fast as they can, because they can advance and shoot because they are White Scars. Put this stuff away. And then I have a captain as well, but I'm actually not even going to be using him, but this is the captain that came in that Phobos starter. Probably not going to use him. I don't see his value as much as I see the value of something like a captain in Gravis armor. But yeah, so that's my Mantis Warrior. So that was a project that I started last year for 8th edition, only because I sort of got the inspiration to do it, saw the bits on the Puppets War site and was like, it'd be kind of interesting to do like a samurai-themed Space Marine army that wasn't over the top with the samurai theming. Like I really wanted to walk a fine line between using those design influences, but not making the army look out of place in 40K, right? So that's sort of what I was trying to do with. And I've got a bunch of other stuff to paint. I've got 2 of those war suits, and I've got a bunch of Phobos Marines that came in the Shadow Spear starter box to paint, and so we'll see if I ever get around to those. But the next project that I'm going to do, and I'm going to probably paint some of it here on stream for you, will be the bikes, and so we'll get those done. So let's go back to talking about why I guess this is one of the reasons why I'm hyped to play 9th edition, but I sort of wanted to get into the specifics of why I'm interested in 9th edition. So here are the core rules. These are free, so I'm not breaking any laws by sharing this PDF, because you can get this for free off the Warhammer community website. So this is the basic core of 9th edition, and the fact that they got the basic core rules into 26 pages is pretty cool. And so here's what I think is probably maybe the most innovative thing that they did, and it's kind of silly to say that this is innovative, but these bullet points really hammer home how these rules should be interpreted, right? How these rules, let's put something there that's exciting to look at, so that while you're looking at the there. Or you're looking at the PDF, if you want to look up in the corner, you can see my little Inquisitor. So how these rules need to be interpreted, and this is why, like, when I read the 9th edition rulebook, when I read this little sucker cover to cover, I realized this is written by lawyers. Like, when I'm reading it, it's like reading a legal document in terms of how things are spelled out in the text and then summarized in the bullet points. it's clear that this version of the rules was played by people who have played the game in the wild. They are not people who have played the game in the studio in controlled situations, controlled playtest groups where everyone sort of has the same basic mentality and understanding of how the rules should work, so you tend to overlook a lot of things. It's clear that the people who wrote this rule set, or at least contributed considerably to the revisions of the 8th edition, which is what 9th edition is, it's a revision of 8th, really understood the game, really had a strong knowledge of playing the game in the wild. So playing the game at tournaments, playing the game at local gaming stores, how everyone, all the consumers out there, us, the Warhammer 40,000 players, how we consume the game. There's a really strong that's more than any other edition of the game going back to like second and maybe between fourth, maybe the transition from 4th edition to 5th edition. I'm going to use that because that was also sort of an incremental change in the game, where there was there felt like the people contributing to the core rules played the game with people who were not contributing to the core rules, right? If you and your buddy are all game designers and you're all designing and playtesting each other's games, you're designing in a bubble, right? If you go to a friendly gaming store and just play pickup games with random people, or you have a gaming group that's fairly diverse in terms of the players' ages, how much experience they have with the game, all the different armies that they like to play, the styles of games they like to play, then you're going to have a really broad and strong understanding of how the rules work and how the rules can be exploited and broken. And I feel like this version of the game is the first that's like, we're not going to let you exploit and break these rules, because we're going to spell it all out for you in really easy to understand verbiage, and then we're going to summarize that verbiage with these bullet points at the end that essentially just take those two or three paragraphs that you just read and reiterate what that means to the game, right? And they clearly added a lot of unique new ideas to the game. They solved problems in creative ways. So there was problems with overlapping auras in 8th edition. It was all like, and now this is sort of anecdotal on my part, because as I said, I played about 6 games of 8th edition, and like 3 of those were against the same guy. So the where was I at? Sorry, I'm just going to quickly try and catch up here on the chat. Loran says -2 AP. That's what it is. Their pistols are -2 AP. And also, here's another quick thing, Loran. They changed their like terror tactics ability, because it used to be any enemy that was within, 3 inches of any unit with this ability is -2 leadership on their morale tests. Now you're just -2 leadership. So you can be -4 leadership. If I got 2 squads beside you, you're -4 to your leadership. That means your guys are booking, man. Have you considered tiny Buddhas on your dreadnought? No, I'm not buying that. There's some really wacky third-party printed, 3D printed mod kits for 40k stuff out there, and some of them are just absolutely ridiculous. And one has these like little like pagodas. It's a dreadnought carapace with like pagodas, like Asian style pagodas on its shoulders, and then a little it's not Buddha, but it's the little fat guy, right? Everyone calls him Buddha, but he's actually not Buddha. He's a little fat like god of like happiness and wealth or something. I can't remember what his actual name is. So Alex says, seems like it was extensively playtested by the community, notably certain YouTube channels. Well, that's just it. So if there's people out there who have a dearth of experience playing 8th edition in all kinds of different environments, then they're the ones you want to go to when you go, hey, what's wrong with 8th edition? How can we fix it? And I think they did. I think 9th edition is that. Now, that's not to say that everything in here is roses and peachy awesomeness, because I do have some issues. We'll get to that. I kind of want to quickly flip through the rule book here and talk about sort of what, when I was reading the rule book, what it was that was really grabbing me. And maybe I'm 6 months too late now. I mean, I don't know, when did 40K came out? 2020 is a weird year. I feel like anything before March is like the ancient times. So let's see what we got here. It's Budai, I believe. So here is, so you have the basic rules, your army structure. So keywords. So again, when I was talking about like cutting up with creative solutions for that overlapping auras and those like bubbles and things getting weird, like having Rowboat Gilman stand behind like 3 repulsor tanks and just like give his magic aura buff to all of them, sort of thing. That's gone now because they just added in a very simple mechanic, which is these are only going to be work on core units, right? So these special fancy auras that you have are only going to work on units that have this core keyword. And the whole keyword mechanic that they sort of, sorry, my hair is disasters. The whole keyword mechanic that they sort of brought in 8th edition, they've really exploited it and made a best use of it in 9th now, I think. And they just sort of decide, they go through and they define what's a unit. I don't know what a unit is because I've never played 40K before. Like if I'm someone buying into the game for the first time ever, so I'm just gonna mute that. I don't need to talk to anyone. Unit coherency, very easily spelled out. Clearly, they've increased. They've effectively made terrain a lot better, just by. I think they may have gone a little bit too far in terms of like this marketing driven, like, oh, you got to get these terrain cards with the special sector rules for them, and then each building will have its own data sheet of what this building can do and sort of things like that. I don't think that's necessarily necessary, but having assignable features to terrain, so you and I can both agree, well, that is breachable, right? Which means we can just move through it, but it's difficult, so it's going to eat your movement. Or that is defendable because it's got some high walls or something, right? So I think that that's great because that didn't necessarily exist in 8th edition. I think that was one of 8th edition's biggest shortcomings, and continued to make the game feel abstract. My biggest thing about 9th edition that I really like is that the game feels less abstract than 3rd to 7th, right? Which was a very abstract sort of idea of the game, like with the AP and with the way certain things worked. It's, you know, there's things obviously about 4th and 5th edition that I love. I love the city fight, the area terrain, all that good stuff. But you guys all know that. Hints and tips, wobbly models. There you go. Rolling off. How do you roll off? What is that? You know, sequencing. How do we figure out in which order we do things? And then, you know, so just really well-defined things. And then I like that they've created icons. Now, these icons might be a little bit odd because we can read and we have words. But remember, 40K is a global game, right? So creating these icons, and if you see... Let me pull out. Here's the instructions for the Primaris vehicle. Well, mine's covered in paint, but whatever. Just give me 1 second here. I'll go back over this way. So as you can see, there are the icons. So we don't have movement, weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, wounds, attacks, leadership, armor save. But we have the icons, and if you know what the icons do, then you know what everything else does. Obviously, that's to make the game more accessible on an international, because all this packaging is now universal, right? There's no regional specific packaging for Games Workshop products anymore. It's all packed away. So let's go back to our trusty rusty PDF here. And so yeah, so I'm glad that they sort of, I mean, it's fine. Like, I understand, you know, I can't really look at this totally objectively as someone who has 30 plus years of playing war games, but I feel like this is the most accessible version of the game yet, and that is a good thing for the health of the hobby. And then we got rules for modifying characteristics, because that's something that you couldn't do between 3rd and 7th, was modify things, right? How dare you have a -1 to hit? That, you know, I'm going to force you to re-roll it, or there'll be some other mechanic to cover that. Same thing with like save modifiers. We got all the way through 3rd to 7th edition, we got this abstract concept of armor penetration, which is my gun is really good, But if you've got an armor save of 3+ on your Space Marine, you're always going to have that 3+ on the Space Marine, right? There's nothing that, a stronger gun can do to make that 3+ into a 4+ or whatever, right? It's all or nothing, right? My gun can either punch through your armor no problem, or my gun will just bounce off your armor. And I kind of like that they've brought that granularity from second edition and revised it, because in second edition you had like -9, so they had ridiculous save modifiers and some stuff. But it makes more sense, and if you apply those save modifiers and those hit modifiers conservatively, like they've done in 9th edition, you can still have that granularity without without compromising the effectiveness of units on the table. So what do I mean by that? I mean, I'm never gonna have more than a -1 to hit you with my ballistic skill, because that's right in the rules. You could be in cover, you could have a special ability that gives me -1, but I'm only ever going to go from a 3+ to a 4+, right? Which means that we understand your effectiveness, and your effectiveness can't really be compromised beyond that. There's no like, well, you need 6s to hit me. That doesn't exist in this game, really. It could for some things. Like if something had a 6+ ballistic skill and it was -1 to hit, well, now you need a 7, right? But generally, a 6 always succeeds, a 1 always fails. That's a classic concept going back to days of yore, and that you'll never really have to worry about more than a -1 to your save modifier, or to your armor, to your hit modifier, whereas armor saves can be just totally blown away, right? Like if I've got a -4, I've got a weapon that's got a -4 save modifier, your Space Marines aren't, sorry. I believe the Indomitus box really started in 9th, and that was the end of June, early July. Yeah, so I think that's when I took my Mantis Warriors down to Ashes, and we played, so it was probably, I think it would have been in July. There's a new Warlord trait that does a further -1 leadership and also gives -1 to the attrition tests. Yes. You can put it on a Reaver Lieutenant and just be the super scary dude. That's awesome. No, that's wicked, Loren. You should totally do that. Just make like the most spookiest Reaver Lieutenant you can. I'm actually getting my Indomitus box this Thursday. Pile of shame will grow. Yeah, I didn't get the Indomitus box because I wasn't hyped for 40k, like I am right now. But at the end, there really wasn't much in the box that I looked at and went, okay, how can I use that in my Mantis Warriors? Obviously, the Outrider bikes make perfect sense. And I said, well, I'll just wait for them to come out on their own. The Close Combat Intercessors kind of makes sense, but I want a multi-part kit so that I can switch their shoulder pads and stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with these guys. These are the snap fit, the ones that do come in Indomitus, because I got them. I bought the Command Edition, so it's not like I didn't buy a giant 40k box, because I did want the little tiny mini rulebook, because this is the kind of rulebook I prefer to read, even though I realize my old man eyes, because all they did was shrink down the book, so the font in this is like 6 points, and my old man eyes have a problem with it. So maybe I will get a big hardcover just so I can read the damn thing without squinting. But again, I get PDFs, and apparently I paid $7 for an app at some point, because all of a sudden I got your Apple invoice from Apple, and I'm like, what the hell did I buy? And it's like, oh yeah, $7 to subscribe to the 40k app. And I said, I don't remember doing that, but I guess I must have at some point. I'm gonna cancel that because that app is shit. Sorry, Games Workshop, fix your fucking 40k app. It's garbage. You should be ashamed, really. And that's the kind of straight talk you won't get on Ash Barker's channel. He'll say something nice. He'll couch it nicely, and he'll be like, well, it's a work in progress. It has a lot of opportunities to improve. Games Workshop, your app is shit. Anyways. The battle round. So let's talk about why I'm hyped for 9th edition. I like this command phase. So this is 8th edition in a nutshell, but fixed. Like, I feel like these are always the better versions of the game. Like, 4th edition 40k was better than 3rd. 5th edition was better than 4th. The jury's out on 6th edition because they made some things in there that I wasn't really all that hot on, like the whole like remove the closest model sort of thing, and it became a really weird like where do I put my models guys kind of game in 6th edition, and that turned me off, which as a result is one of the many reasons why I sort of stopped playing 40k in 6th edition. I'm just gonna fix my hair. I'm gonna try to. Sorry. All right, so command phase. Now you get a CP every turn. That's cool, and they've kind of made CPs more dynamic. And one of the things that I'm really excited is when we get into the version of the game that really excites me, which is Crusade. You don't have to use CPs to buy all those little things at the beginning, like upgrading your chapter master. Well, you don't do that now anyways, but like taking extra relics. You spend requisition points on those, which leaves you more CPs for the actual in-game stuff. Because what I found is that in the half dozen games of 8th edition I played, I took 2 detachments, so I was maxing out my CPs. I think I was around 12 CPs in like a 2,000 point game. Because I had 2 detachments. And so I was farming CPs that way. But I was spending most of them before the game even began. I was spending more than half of all my CPs. Upgrading my guy to a chapter master, taking an extra relic, taking an extra warlord trait, upgrading a unit to veteran intercessors, so that's like half your, and then putting a unit in strategic reserves so that I can outflank them. So that's like half my CPs right there, right? So I'm kind of excited about the new command phase being more dynamic and being a bit more involved with things and actually having CPs to use and not feeling like I have to be miserly with my CPs, that you can kind of throw them out there to try some cool things every now and then. Movement, again, I like the way that they've defined. This is a normal move. This is an advanced move. This is a fallback move. And if you look at all the new language in the new codexes, it all relates to when they do this. So when they make an advanced move, regardless of what an advanced move is for you, but when they make an advanced move, this is the ability that triggers off that sort of thing. So I like that. And again, this was stuff that was sort of established in 8th edition, but I feel has come... has become more significant and a vaster improvement on the game in terms of making the game accessible and make sense and closing those loopholes. Because one thing, if you've ever played 40k, and if you're watching this and you haven't played 40k, why are you here? If you ever played 40k, people always look for holes, right? They always look for those loopholes and rules that they can exploit. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually part of the hobby in a lot of ways, is going through your codex and figuring out, how can I build the coolest dude that's totally unstoppable? And that's how things like the Smash Captain come into existence. And the Smash Captain becomes a meme because he's the captain everyone's using because he's so effective on the table, right? And like, people build their own Smash Captains. I built my own Smash Captain, named the Lord Mastodon, and he's a Space Marine. He's a Space Marine chapter master on a bike with a thunder hammer and a storm shield, and he's an Iron Hand, and he was awesome. I think I only ever used him once, so I'm saying he was awesome in terms of the model that I made for him was awesome. I'll show him off someday. So yeah, so there's your and again, with your bullet points, you can fall back, you move your movement, but if you fall back, you can't charge unless you're White Scars. You cannot shoot unless they are Titanic or White Scars with a CP. White Scars are all about the movement. Your reinforcement. So your reinforcement phase is now it's now its own phase. Maybe it was an 8th edition. People with 8th edition experience, but I'm pretty sure that it was always like end of the command phase. Like at the end of the command phase, bring on your reinforcements. And the way your reinforcements arrive on the table is, again, really well spelled out in the text, and then really well spelled out, and then reinforced. They reinforce the rules on reinforcement in the bullet points. So layout for this game, I'm going to say it right now, and this may be controversial, and feel free to flame me if it is, but this is the best written miniature war game in the history of miniature war games. I said it, 9th edition 40k, best written. It's clear, it's concise, it's easy to follow, and as someone who has played every edition of Warhammer 40,000, and even like every alternate edition that people may not even remember, because there were times when we had experimental rules that were fact as genuine rules. So 2 examples that I'll give you. I'll start with the earliest one, which is in Rogue Trader. In a issue of White Dwarf, they published new close combat rules. This is now how we do close combat in Rogue Trader. Take the close combat rules from your Rogue Trader rulebook and toss them out, because that's not how we do close combat anymore. We've got new rules for it. Damn Mattis. Damn you, Tyler. You get me off track now with your silly comments. So they did that in Rogue Trader. Subsequently, a book came out called the Battle Manual, which had those new rules in it, as well as some other new rules and changes on how the game was played. So I remember those. In 3rd edition, there was a set of rules that came out, and I'm sure that, I'm going to say, Lorand, you should probably remember this if you're still watching, that they put out new close combat rules for 3rd edition. Because this is now how we do close combat in 3rd edition, because the close combat rules as written in the 3rd edition rulebook are a little bit wonky, and we want to fix them. So you publish those on White Dwarf, and then subsequently, when 4th edition finally came out, but that was in but I think they republished them in a chapter approved later on, because chapter approves were generally White Dwarf magazines. But when 4th edition came out, those were then the close combat rules. So having played every version of 40k that has ever existed, I'm going to make the mighty bold statement that this is not only the best version of 40k, but this is the best miniature wargaming rule set. From a point of reading a rule book, this is the best rule set for a miniature game. And that's exciting to someone like me who's been playing the game for 30-something years, on and off, mostly on. It's exciting to see a really solidly written set of core rules that close up a lot of loopholes. Doesn't mean there's not loopholes still in there, because creative players will find creative ways to break your game. If you're a game designer, that's one of the things you have to learn, like, very early on, is that your play testers, your best play testers, are the ones who just come back and say, "Yeah, I ruined your game. Go fix it." Right? Wrong, says Lorand. It is one of the best rules. It's the best miniature rule set. What's better? I can think of one rule set that I would rate as better than this, but it's also heavily related to this, and that's Necromunda, because I think that the current version of Necromunda is the best game. Fantastic game, just in terms of everything that's on it. But I'm gonna say, in terms of a battle game, a miniature tabletop war game, which is what, it's not a skirmish game, it's a war game, although it is a skirmish game, because you can play small games. And that's the other thing, is that I think this game scales good, but I also think that this game has a cap. Having played only a 1,000-point game, and that was my first game, it felt like it was a lot. And not in terms of the number of models out on the table, but it felt like there was a lot to keep track of. Now, that's probably just because it was my first game on 9th edition, and I hadn't played much 8th edition, so I was rusty, and I didn't really know the rules, and I was playing on camera, so I had to make sure that I looked good, and so, but the rule set, and it feels like anything over 2,000 points is gonna be a slog. Having played that 1,000-point game, I couldn't imagine playing a game on that table with twice as much stuff, so 2,000 points. I feel like you could add more things in. I think this game's sweet spot, and ironically enough, it doesn't have an entry for that sweet spot, is going to be like 1,500 points. Reinforcements, transport. So again, spelling out how transports work, how aircraft work, and it's all very clear now. And a lot of things lost a lot of stuff, right? Your psychic phase, psychic powers. Anyways, this is just a really good set of rules. And then I love this. This is obviously an 8th edition thing, but I love the new wound roll because it's so simple. There's no longer a chart that you cross-reference strength and toughness on. It's just, am I stronger than you? 3. Am I twice strong as you're tough? 2. Am I weaker than you? 5, right? Like, am I the same? 4. Like, it's easy to understand, and you don't need a chart to reference, right? Not that you ever needed a chart to reference, really, because it essentially worked out to this table anyways, generally. Big things are hard. I'm gonna assume you're saying hard to scale well. I have knights as well, and they don't feel knighty. Well, one thing I do like is that they recommend that if you want to play those sort of quick play games, there's a game you can go play. It's called Apocalypse, and from what I understand, Apocalypse is actually a really cool game. And if you want to play smaller than like 25 points or 15 points or 25 points, go play Kill Team, right? Which is also a cool game. And I'm assuming that next spring we're gonna get Kill Team 2.0. We're gonna get a revised version of Kill Team. allocating attacks. So anyways, I don't want to read all the rules and sort of go over them. I'm just going to sort of say like what. So here we go. Hit and wound rolls cannot be modified by more than -1 or +1. So again, that's managing the effectiveness of things on the battlefield. You know, it's like I can't load up on stuff and load up on auras that makes my guys impossible to hit. Oh, you're -4 to hit me because I'm hidden behind this wall and I'm wearing cameo line and I've got a special stratagem that I just popped that gives me an additional, you know, super bonus to -1 to hit. So again, these last 2 bullet points here under inflict damage are really important because those are now core concepts of the rules, right? On modified hit and wound of 6 always succeed. A 1 always fails, and hit and wound rolls cannot be modified by more than +1 or -1. I think that's probably good. And then invulnerable saves, essentially the same. Mortal wounds. I like that I feel like they've reined back some of the mortal wound stuff. If you play Age of Sigmar, there are armies that are just built to deal out mortal wounds, but then they don't do a lot of like regular damage. And there's a lot of armies that do tons of normal damage, but don't really have any decent ways of dealing out mortal wounds. I feel like obviously we're only 2 codexes in, and I have not read the Necron Codex, but I've heard it's dirty as hell. That mortal wounds, I like the concept of the mortal wound. And I like, because it's like a guaranteed shot, right? It's like 2+, you're at least going to take something, or 3+, or whatever it is. And ignoring wounds. A model can only use 1 rule to attempt to ignore each wound suffered. And again, it's these little bullet points that sort of encapsulate everything you need to know to not be a dick playing Warhammer 40k is in these bullet points. Charges, yep, good. And then a whole thing on, and then I like these little advanced rule bubbles where it talks about charging over terrain, flying when charging, and Overwatch. And they fixed Overwatch, and I'm assuming that Tau can still Overwatch like motherfuckers. I'm guessing they can still do that. Performing heroic interventions. So, and again, this is a lot of this 8th edition stuff, but the way that it's cleaned up and reworded for 9th edition just helps clarify things. So it's a really clear rule set. You want to know what's better? It's also why you just wanted to be heard. Just being a dork. Of course you are. Apoc is fun. Not a fan of mortal wound spam. They should be special. Well, they should be. It should be something rare. Like, I like the idea of sniper rifles dealing mortal wounds. I like the idea of having some kind of a weapon that could potentially deal out mortal wounds. Even having let's take Manda Blast. I think Manda Blast should do mortal wounds, right? It's like every turn at the beginning of the close combat phase, striking scorpions can shoot their Manda Blasters off, and on a 6+, your unit takes a mortal wound. So if I've got 10 striking scorpions, I roll 10d6. Every 6 is a mortal wound because you get Manda Blasters. That's cool. That makes sense to me because that's sort of a special thing that the striking scorpion should be able to do. But I don't like the idea of, this weapon just deals mortal wounds in addition because I rolled I don't know. They should be things that you have to try and work in. If that makes any sense. Maybe not. I've been rambling for an hour now, so it's hard to keep yourself on track. All right. Number of attacks, which models fight, yada, yada, yada. Selecting targets. So I like that now it's like you can split your attacks, and it defines how you split your attacks. How you select your weapons. You don't have a weapon? Well, here's your basic close combat weapon. Everyone's assumed to be able to pull out a little stiletto knife or something, right? Consolidation moves and things like that. Very simple. Morale test. This is the one thing that they radically... Now, having not played a lot of 8th edition... is this how morale test was done before? Because now this whole, you make the morale test and then you make the combat attrition test. It's weird to me. Whatever happened to just rolling 2d6 and rolling under your leadership? Pass, fail. Now you can fail a morale test, lose a guy, and then you make a combat attrition to see if you lose more guys. It's kind of cool. And I like... So it seems like it's a little bit more... It's just different. And I guess I'm used to many, many editions of roll 2d6 under your leadership to pass your leadership test, right? Your morale test. Now it's d6 plus number of model destroyed, and you're basically trying to exceed the unit's leadership. This is interesting. Missions. So I've only played one mission, but from what I've read, the missions are a lot more action focused. You have to go and do stuff to make your missions happen. You have to secure things and perform actions. There's not a lot of passive reaction ways to win games. You have to be actively trying to play the mission, which is, I guess, good. But I've also heard some criticism that it's kind of bad because it tends to favor those armies that are able to be dynamic on the field and reposition, and so it'll favor armies with higher movement. It'll favor armies that are able to redeploy or deploy true or things like that. Armies that are more defensive based will have a harder time because they may not be able to rush forward and grab those objectives that early in the game will score you the big points. But anyways, that's neither here nor there in terms of the game. I think that will sort itself out as they sort of revise missions. What I've heard is that the current general, not the General's Handbook, what's it called? Chapter approved, or no, what do they call it now? Grand Tournament. The Grand Tournament pack, apparently those missions are very, very aggro. Like, you need to be aggro to win those missions, and it tends to favor players who get to the first turn, which is a bad thing. We don't want to be doing that. We want there to be advantages and disadvantages to going first or second, right? If a mission is all about who can ever score that first turn early VPs, a VP farm, then the game becomes about having that first turn. And I don't know if that's necessarily what you want. What you want. But yeah, so let's see. No, you used to lose the difference like AOS, I believe. Well, I forgot. See? No idea. Too many rule sets floating around my noggin. This is the one that's most fresh in my mind. So I'm just assuming that everything in 9th edition is brand new, right? This is a new thing. They've never done this before. And speaking of that, battlefield size. This is kind of something that I don't think they've done before, where it's like, here's the size of the game and these weird shapes. And why are they weird shapes? Well, because when you fold a piece of cardboard and it fits into a GW game box, that's how you get these weird dimensions. 44 by 30, because it folds into a box, which is cool. I mean, because then it also means that it becomes more accessible, because not everyone has a 4 foot by 6 foot table in their living room. They probably have a dining room table, which tend not to be more than 30 inches wide or more than 40 inches wide. So that's probably good. At 44 inches is almost 4 feet. That's significant. But like playing that incursion size game, 44 by 30 is easy to lay out on a dining room table. So that's cool. And then the strike force is essentially... I see. This is combined power level, so that would be a 100 power level game would be a strike force, and they say that up to 3 hours. Man, remember the days when you played 2nd edition 40K and you needed like a weekend to play the game? I do. Hey, let's play 2,500 points of 40K. Okay. Well, we'll start Saturday night and we'll finish sometime mid-Sunday afternoon. So here we go. Determine first turn. So there's no way to finagle the first turn roll off. I wonder if certain armies will have that ability, because right now it's you just roll off and the winner can choose to take first or second turn. So it doesn't matter who finished deploying first. Doesn't matter, like if you have less units, it's just a straight roll, right? I'm assuming. Setup, yeah. Players with roll. Yeah, so then rolling off to set up all the units, and then, yeah, so just roll off. So I bet, like, Dark Eldar will have something that allows them to mess with that first turn roll, because that's kind of their thing, right? At least they should. And then we've got sort of your basic idea of a battleground here. So you have your deployment zone, your other deployment zone, the center of the battlefield, and you're pushed back 12 inches each way. So the game starts... and nobody is closer than 2 inches to their opponent, right? Unless you've got some funky deployment guys. And that is the last page of the free rules. I can quickly grab this book and say, what do I think of open play? Sure. What do I think of matched play? Sure. What do I think of narrative play? Awesome. People have been critical of narrative play, at least the way the Games Workshop has done it. To me, narrative play just means do what you want. Anytime I've played a game narratively, I've never needed a set of rules to tell me to forge the narrative, right? To tell me to play, to make a story as I'm playing. Some of my best narrative games are just regular games of 40K that my opponent and I narrated to each other as we went along and sort of agreed that this is what the characters were thinking and this is what they were doing, sort of thing. But within this narrative play, what we have is... Oh, that's a really neat army. Is this crusade stuff. And the fact that your guys will get ranks and battle honors. And that... that makes it... really interesting. It makes it like a campaign skirmish game like Necromunda, but or even if you played the old Mighty Empires, and there was a 40K version of Mighty Empires as well, where you could get battle honors and things like that. I like this whole requisition point thing. It's a cool little system, and I don't think it's anything that you have to marry yourself to. In terms of we should play straight out of this, but this should just be like a guideline of like, hey, obviously the way that they've worded it is the kind of what they did with Warcry, which is like, hey, you can just do this whenever you play. Whenever you play, you get your battle honor guys. Just make sure you tell your opponent, oh, I'm using my Crusade guys, which means that these guys have this and these guys have that and these guys have this and that and this, and my chapter master has the Black Blade of the Dreaded Woo, and you know, we've got all these battle honors and whatnots. Because I played all these other games, and your opponent's like, oh, okay, I take your word for it. And that's why you can show him your little book. I bought one, and I immediately regretted it. Where is that? Where's that stupid thing? Anyways, I bought one of those 40K... Oh, here it is. One of these, the, like, journal, where it's essentially just the same 2 pages. I even started to fill mine out. Like Captain and Gravis armor. Where it's like the same 2 pages over and over again. This page, this page, this page, this page, just throughout the whole thing. So, I don't know. I do everything on my iPad. I don't know why I bought this. It's cute. So, we'll talk briefly about the way that you build armies. I like this. I like this new system. Again, you're no longer farming CPs by breaking your guys up into detachments. You're actually costing yourself CPs to do that. And I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, and here's your core stratagems, and that sort of existed in 7th edition, didn't it? We had stratagems and stuff. Anyways, I don't know. I'm excited to play 9th edition. That's basically what I'm going to say. That's the treatise of this entire me rambling and babbling, is that I'm actually really hype and excited to play 9th edition. Let's see if I hit all my little notes here. Yep. Laura's a mess, always has been. So yeah, I'm just gonna read some of the chat here, and then I think we'll shut things down for the day. So Loran says, also, secondary objectives is huge. Yeah, so being able to custom tailor and choose what... being able to custom tailor and choose what your... Sorry, I'm sweating in here now. It's warm. My fan's not even pointing at me. My fan's pointing at the couch. Being able to like pick and choose those secondary objectives that you know you can achieve, or that your opponent is going to give you because his army sucks, and you've discovered that, hey, if I take the secondary objective and do that to that unit, that's going to net me a bunch of points. I think that's cool. So yeah, I like the whole, like, you have your main objective and then you can sort of pick your secondary objectives, and that's sort of been around for quite a while in some gaming. If you want to look at a really good developed mission set, go look at the 1st edition. I'm sure that it happened in 2nd edition, but I never played 2nd edition. But go look at the 1st edition of Malifaux. And they had this really cool, like, here's your primary mission, and then you can build yourself a little secondary mission that are secret, and you can kind of do them and score your points without your opponent, you know, knowing or stopping. So Alex says, yeah, secondary objectives are one of the best editions in 9th edition. I think we've got 20 plus command points and reroll everything all the time is no longer a thing. Yeah. Well, that's sort of what excites me about 9th edition is that it doesn't have all that, those ridiculous overlapping bubbles and the alpha strikes, and the exploitability seems to be gone. You can't exploit the game to work in a way where you're metagaming a lot heavier. It seems like this game means it's going to be a lot harder to meta. So let's see. Alex says, straight roll for the first turn. My guess is Dark Eldar will get something similar to the Necron custom dynasty ability to move everything 6 inches before the game. Or yeah, or something like that. I know like Orcs, there's like a reposition that you can get where you just pick up a bunch of units. This is the Speed Freaks one. You pick up like the 3 units plus the HQ and you can redeploy them. And you can do that after you roll to see who gets the first turn, right? Because that's a problem. That could be a real problem. Is that if you're assuming you're going to get the first turn and you're putting things out there, they're going to get walloped if you don't get the first turn. So it's good to be able to at least pull some of that stuff back, put it into cover, reposition it so it's out of line of sight and things like that. You've reached the end of chat. So it would seem, yeah. So there we go. Oh, there's Roboot. Oh, let's go back. Let's look at that guy. So here's something I never really thought I would see in 40K. I guess I should have assumed that it would happen one day. It's Primarchs. I remember when they sort of were like, hey, Roboot's coming back, and I was like, or Roboot's back in Pog form. And I was like, well, that sucks. Because I don't really like the idea of Primarchs floating out there. I guess you need someone to counter Abaddon, but Abaddon's not a Primarch. Abaddon's a chump. Cool model. I have one unassembled somewhere still on a sprue that I should probably assemble and paint. Maybe. I don't know. So yeah, so there you go. So that's why I'm hyped to play 9th edition. It just seems like it's a really solid rule set, and it has me excited for 40K where I have not been excited for 40K in a long, long time. So there, that's took me an hour and 23 minutes to get to that. So tomorrow I'm going to go back to painting Rogue Trader. I obviously didn't paint anything today. I'm going to go back to painting some Rogue Trader models. Or I may paint a Space Marine Chaplain on a bike. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. I'm going to go prime some stuff this afternoon. So we'll see what we get tomorrow when it comes to painting. All Eldar can CP up to 3 unit redeploy after roll before turn. All Eldar can. Okay, that makes sense. I know the Orcs have something like that too, and I think a lot of the armies should have some sort of redeploy. Otherwise, you're just deploying everything and hiding, because the first turn Alpha Strike is still something a player can pull off if they're set up for it and they're willing to, you know. But again, neither side knows 100% for sure if they're going to be that first turn player. So you have to deploy accordingly, right? But if you say, hey, I am the first turn player, well, great, now I can move these units here. They're now going to speed 20 inches up and shoot you with multi-meltas, because that's what's going to happen. That's why I'm pretty excited about these guys, because I can hide them behind something and then zoom them up the table and blast away at you with these guys on their flanks, the Outriders on the flanks, and then the Outriders are going to be able to advance and shoot and charge all in the first turn. So prepare for my Alpha Strike, because it's coming. And on that note, I'm going to call it there. So thanks. I'm Christian. This has been the Eternal Chronicles. I do this every Monday to Friday at noon. I just kind of get on the old yap box here, the YouTubes, and spout nonsense. So if you're into spouting nonsense, come back tomorrow and watch me spout some more nonsense. If you're not into spouting nonsense, thanks for coming out. All right. So I'll see you guys here tomorrow. Same work time, same work channel, on the flippity flop, all that good stuff. Peace out.